Good morning. We're going to talk about eBay's feedback program. If you sold on eBay for very long, you probably have strong feelings about it one way or the other. If you're new to the platform, the feedback program is one of those things you're going to have to learn about because it can affect your statistics, your stats, your money, and how you feel about eBay in the long term. A couple weeks ago, I started noticing automated feedbacks arriving. It's interesting that eBay's chosen to do this at this time. It could simply be an expansion of their AI use, but what was it that caused eBay to decide that sellers need to receive feedbacks when items are sold, they're received properly and on time, and the buyer doesn't bother to give them the feedback they have in the past? The eBay feedback system has been controversial for as long as I can remember. It just has. The challenge is one of balance. They are trying to entice customers to buy on the platform. And when they have to make a choice between hitting a buyer or hitting a seller, they'll hit the seller almost every time. That's been my experience. I think it's the experience many long-term sellers have. If there's going to be a loss involved, it often goes to the seller. We sell under 3 stores, and the oldest is about 22 years old. The youngest is about 5. I've never really received a lot of feedback for the length of time I've been using eBay. I think in the oldest account we have about 1,800. In the newest we have about 300. And generally, other than reading the feedback I received, I pretty much ignore the system. And I do that because in the long run, it doesn't have a lot of effect unless you get a negative. Now, there are some benefits to the system, but in general, I think the nuisance that comes along with the way eBay has the program set up far outweighs the benefits. The benefits. A buyer can reach out and tell you when you did well. They liked your shipping. They liked your speed of delivery. They think the item was good value. But all too often, you only hear from the buyers with problems, or if the buyer has an issue. And that's a wide range of items, and one of the basic problems with eBay's feedback system. It's never been balanced or fair, or at least it hasn't been since years ago when eBay removed a seller's ability to give a buyer negative feedback. Anytime you have a system that is biased in favor of one party over another, the system has flaws, it has issues. And in the case of eBay, you can only give a buyer a positive. But a buyer, for any reason they want to, can give you a negative or a neutral. But it's one of those systems by which if you disagree with the feedback you've received, you have to take action. Otherwise, it stands. And often, even if you disagree, it still stands. eBay has a whole list of policies, and you can learn more about the feedback system, and I recommend you do, by going to the top of any eBay screen where it says Help and typing in the feedback. And I'll show you some of these pages. But they have a long list of policies and reasons you can request to have a feedback removed when you disagree. If they're offensive, if they're blatantly just using the system to try to get something out of you, trying to extort something. And usually that's a price reduction. But it can be a return sometimes. So that's another reason. The system is ripe and open for abuse. It just is. Your competition can buy something and then put a negative feedback in, regardless of how you performed. A package can arrive late, and the buyer can blame you, not the post office, and sometimes those stand. eBay has been making moves and regular changes to improve the system. They have been for the 22 years I've been using it. And frankly, I don't think they've got it figured out. I don't know that they ever will. Like I say, normally I don't pay it much attention until I see a neutral or a negative pop up. I do enjoy reading positive feedbacks. I'm sure everyone does. But occasionally I'll get a neutral. In fact, each of two of my stores has one currently. The one I earned, I had an item. It was new old stock in the box. It was a brace, a medical brace. But it turns out that somewhere along the process of me acquiring it, the wrong size had been put in the box. Correct product, wrong size. So the person contacted me and said, hey, this is going to work. I'm happy with it. But by the way, you had an error. So I earned that one. And I took no action because I did earn it. Now another one that I had, just a month or so ago, was for some Xylotech power cords. Now there weren't many of these parts around. They were new old stock. They fit a particular lighting system. I had two, so I put them up as a multi-quantity listing. A gentleman bought two. He asked some questions. I gave him the discount for multi-package shipping. I gave him a discount for buying two. He purchased them, and then he hit me with one of the stranger neutral feedbacks I've ever seen. It had almost no application to my performance as a seller. He goes on to say that he found a similar product, different brand, on Amazon that was cheaper. So it's like he was accusing me of price gouging, but blaming himself for not doing research. So it's just odd. And on that whole list of policies that eBay has for reasons you should be able to get a feedback removed, I think he ticked a couple of those boxes. So I called eBay. They had me request a revision, because that's one of the things you can do. When you believe a buyer is wrong, you can ask them for more information, clarification. You can ask them what you can do to fix the problem. And if you do, then you can ask for a revision. Now this is where one of those abusive situations often happens. A buyer buys the item, and after they've received it, they want something you didn't promise. Often it's a price reduction, sometimes it's a return. And when you don't comply or give them what they want, which I don't believe you should have to, they in turn open a negative or a neutral feedback. And to get it removed, they want you to do an action for them. And that borderlines extortion. Sometimes it's flat out extortion. They'll actually say in their comment to you that they're going to give you a negative if you don't do X. They're going to do it. And in that case, you can normally get those removed. And that's the thing about calling eBay about a removal. You've got to find one of the reasons on the list that you can say, this buyer violates this reason. And if you can prove that hook, often you can get them removed. And that's about all the control you really have over the feedback system. You can, when you feel you've been wrongly accused of something, you can go out and try to get that comment removed. Otherwise, it's there for everybody to see, depending on your settings. They can see your numbers, but you can make the actual comments private or public. So there you are. You've got your negative, you've got your neutral, and you've done your revision. In the cases of the Xylotech parts, first thing he did when he seemed to have a problem is I sent out for more information. I asked the buyer, tell me more about this so I can compare what you found on Amazon. He never answered. So then I called eBay. eBay said, oh, you haven't done a revision request yet. I said, well, the buyer wouldn't even answer the question. He's not likely going to do anything. And you run right into one of eBay's standard comments. Well, you have to follow the procedure. We can't help you if you don't do the steps in the order that we've promulgated. So I did. I sent the revision. No response. So I called eBay back and I said, he's still unresponsive. And if you look at this feedback, it has no bearing on how I did as a seller. I even gave him a discount. The customer service rep seemed willing to remove it, but she had to put it through the system. And now they've got a lot of automation involved in this. And it came back stating that it was going to stand. They weren't going to deal with it. And that's one of the problems. Depending on how you enter the feedback system and what the issue actually is, you never know when you make the call whether you're going to get it removed or not. The inconsistent nature of eBay's feedback system is one of its negative aspects. To really get a handle on this automated feedback, let's look back a little bit at eBay. they've always had, or for quite some time, they've had a process by which a seller can send out an automated response to a buyer in the feedback system. Thank you very much for making your purchase. You're a valued customer, yada, yada. Now they seem to have flipped it around, and they've said, if the buyer doesn't send you feedback and you meet a few criteria, like shipping it on time, it arriving on time, they haven't complained, the system is going to generate feedback for you. And that's why I said it's not fake feedback, but it is automated feedback. They're taking the buyer out of the feedback. They're putting in an automated system. Is that good? Well, personally, I don't think so. I like hearing from a buyer. As long as I've got to live within the framework of their system, I want to use it to benefit my business. I want to know that buyers like my shipping. I want to know that they like my pricing. I want to look at the numbers from time to time up in the corner that say they're unhappy with the cost of postage, but they're happy with customer service. Because in the long run, those can improve your business. I answer them. Buyer sends me a feedback, regardless of what type, I send them an answer, almost always. There are a couple that are just odd, and I don't touch those. But generally, even the negatives and the neutrals, I work to resolve them when I get them. But I don't get a lot. And it makes me wonder if it's because of the categories I sell in, I see other sellers with hundreds of thousands of feedback, even when they're a small operation. You expect it when a company like Walmart is dumping product onto eBay, but you don't really expect a mom and pop operation like ours to generate hundreds of thousands of feedback, even if they've been around 10, 15, 20 years. I've never seemed to accumulate a lot of feedback. And I have to wonder whether these new automated feedbacks are designed to artificially bump the feedback numbers. But really, the feedback is only comparing you to your competition. So if you're getting a bump because you're selling items and the buyer simply isn't responding, the other guy is getting the same bump as long as he's providing a similar service. So I'm not real sure what benefit this is supposed to produce. To see line after line of repetitive feedback simply dulls the system. And I have to wonder if once buyers learn that the system can generate feedback automatically, if fewer of them will bother. So I already don't get much in the way of feedback. Will I get even less real feedback in the future? Will I begin to see just more and more of this automated? Well, eBay has lots of other analytics and statistics to measure how well you're doing. In fact, they affect your top-rated seller. And just like the feedback numbers, if you get too much negative feedback, it will drop your top-rated status, and it will begin to have some effects. Those effects include having to pay a little more for your shipping, and they affect your ability to sell. Because if you and your competition are all lined up on a page, and the first guy has 100%, and the second guy has 98%, and the next guy has 88%, chances are nobody's buying from that 88% guy. Even though, looking at it honestly, there are very few grading systems in the world where being anything but 100% is really normal. They say, would you buy from a guy with 88% or 84%? Well, he'd have to have about the only available item I needed to do that. So right from the beginning, I've had my doubts about eBay's feedback system. And once they removed my ability to tell a buyer and to tell all the other sellers that that buyer is a problem, I began to care for it less and less. Because if you're going to have a feedback system, it should be a fair playing field. It should be a level playing field. This automated feedback is just one of the more recent changes that eBay's been making. Over the years, like I say, they've tweaked this and they've adjusted it, and at different times they've been more willing to listen to sellers and less willing to listen to sellers. And one of the things they did some time back was add the ability of a buyer to send photos or videos in the feedback. Now, I'm not sure why eBay bothered. There was already a messaging system, And if a buyer had a positive experience or a negative experience and wanted to send you some photos to support that, like a package showing it looked like the box had been driven over by the post office, they always had that ability. So is adding additional elements actually useful? It's like these automatic feedback, repetitive lines. You can turn them off. It shows you a count, but you can turn off the actual listings. And I think I'm generally going to do that because the count is important to me, but reading the same comment over and over and over again, it does nothing to improve my ability to sell. Revisions. They created a system by which you could go out directly to a buyer and say, I believe you're mistaken. If you look at, photo 6, the data was provided to you. I didn't omit it. You had it when you made the buy. So you've been able to go out and ask for revisions. I find that to be basically useless in the sense that if a person took the time to send you a neutral or a negative feedback, chances are nothing you can say or do short of giving in to what they want is going to make them change that revision. But whenever I get a whiff of a buyer trying to extort me for anything, first thing I do is report them. Then I call eBay. I'll request a revision once I've done the research. Once I get no action, I'll call eBay. But on average, it takes about 2 or 3 calls to get eBay to even address it. And often it's delayed. Oh, you'll have to wait 3 days, or you'll have to give the buyer a chance to change their mind, or you'll need to work this out with the buyer. So it consumes time. In fact, in general, any time I sell something, and we've been selling a long time, but if I sell something and there's an issue, package is delayed, package is damaged, item is damaged, item is not as described according to the buyer, I pretty much assume that I have lost my profit, and sometimes my profit and more, the minute that happens. Because if nothing else, the sheer time involved with trying to resolve these issues has eaten into your profit. But I do it anyway. Like the Xylotech one. The last thing I want is a feedback, even a neutral one, that doesn't count against your stats, but a neutral one that basically says, I price gouged that guy. But the guy's not relating the whole story. I went out to Amazon. No Xylotech products. So there was no comparison. He found something else that he could use that was cheaper. Well, that's the nature of marketing. I mean, that is what we do. I took a price comp right off the few parts that were on eBay. I put that up at a comparable price. It was new, it was packaged, it was sold. He had a discount, and he still complained. So I have to wonder what the buyer was after. Did he think I was going to refund his money to get that neutral taken off? Well, I'll eat that neutral and then work to have it resolved. And to this day, 3 attempts, 4 attempts, and a survey. eBay sends me a survey when I tie up one of their customer service reps. And I say, let's look at this. What can you do with this? Give me a recommendation on how to get this removed. They'll often send me a survey afterwards. You recently contacted us. How did it go? And I'll put the details in there, and I'll say, your program's broken, your rep said this, your system did that, and I think this should still be addressed and removed. So I take every opportunity. But you're not making a profit from wasting all that time. And sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. I have gotten a few negatives removed that way when you can clearly say, or this buyer is engaged in extortion. And it's a similar process, but sometimes you win. But the day you pick up that phone, you can't count on it. And why do I do it? I do it because it affects my image. Right next to my store names is a score. And when that score isn't 100%, a buyer can open that and they can compare you to your competition. And the more negatives and neutrals you have, the worse your image looks. So I'm proud of my image. I protect my image. So I take every one of these seriously. When I'm in front of the computer, we'll take a look at some of these features, how to get to the help screen, how it can take you to the policy, where you can find your removal reasons, the whole process, where you can see your scores, how you can link in, where you can see the automated settings now that they're there. You can also sort and say, just show me the ones with images. So you can do that. And like I say, I don't particularly care for all the effort and time eBay is spending changing their feedback system, because they should be spending that time and having their software people fix the day in, day out operational issues. Sometimes eBay gets a big glitch and a big problem and a big policy change, and that affects sellers tremendously. But just about a week doesn't go by when some small annoying little issue should be fixed or controlled by eBay. But they seem to want to spend time creating new things. I guess it's so they can claim they're on the cutting edge of AI. Well, I disagree with AI in general for the purposes they're putting it to use. And the reason is particularly because they don't seem to have people who will look into it quickly and override it when the AI is wrong. And if we want to talk about AI, I've got a couple other videos on that topic up on the playlist for our channel. And you go over and check them out. About these feedbacks, learn the system. You can't really affect the program and the policies, but when you don't agree with one you've received, a feedback, take action. Take a look back at your stats in your store. When you believe you've been wronged and you want to fix it, take the time to do it. I'm Brian, Cabin Fever Reselling. We're at the lake. If you've got a feedback you don't like, go out and change it. If you're new to the system, learn it. It's going to affect your selling, your ability to sell.